amen. Grab that little piece of paper that you have. And this is one of those things where it's like, okay, is this, I debated, right? Is this something to talk about, in part of the worship service, or is this something to send out like in an email, or is this like to have a meeting after? And I thought, like the one place I get everybody all at the same time. Our church structure has changed over the last 5 months, and there's some reasons that I decided to kind of walk you through, but whether you realize it or not, like if you're just in here, like some very fundamental things have been happening behind the scenes in the last. We had outgrown the way we were organized previously, had completely outgrown it. It had become unworkable. There were overlapping responsibilities. There were communication breakdowns. It wasn't scalable, or we wasn't responsive to a growing congregation. And honestly, it was kind of constraining us. And it was creating a lot of frustration and discouragement across the board. So really the primary goal of your church leadership over the last 5 or 6 months has been rebuilding that and restructuring that. And it has, you say, oh, okay, we're just kind of redesigning an org chart, right? You'll see an org chart up here in just a second. But, it is like, it's a ton of work to rebuild and it's like if you're a small business, right? If you've ever gone from being like a really small business to kind of being a medium-sized small business, there are some very, very significant fundamental changes that you have to make to do that. So it took a lot of time, and it took a lot of, and I want to share it with you. You'll see up there an organization chart. Can we put that up on the screen? And you'll see that up there. We got it up there now? Yeah, and you got one in your hands. But I want to show you how the church is kind of organized now. At the top is the congregation. You'll see that in that little blue bubble at the top. And there's a reason for that, because everything that happens in this church is a function of serving the congregation, right? Like, it's not, Jesus says it in, like Matthew 20, right? You know how the Gentiles work. Their rulers lord it over them, right? This structure in the world is inverted, right? The leaders are at the top and everybody else is at the bottom. But not so in the church. Everything works as in service of the body of the church. But as you flow out of that, right, you'll see the next box down, the lead pastor and the elders. The lead pastor is me. The elders are James Anderson, Louis Binkson, and Aaron Cassavant. We are the spiritual leaders and kind of the organizational leaders responsible for all the functions of the church, though we don't do them all. So if you look and you see, like, each Sunday, one of these elders introduces yourself, and you're like, well, what's that guy do? Well, there you go, right? Like, that's our responsibility, is kind of the oversight of all of this and the pastoral care for the church. But as you look down, right, we can't do it all, so we decided to break our church up into 3 different teams. We tried to get it down to 2, but we couldn't quite get there, so we ended up at 3. If you go to my right, your left, you'll see the ministry team. I am currently the chair of that team. That will not stay that way. Louis Binkson is attached to that team also as an elder. The chair will change as the group kind of gets functioning, but in this, you'll see, right, that here's children's ministry, here's groups ministry, here's sports and activities ministry, that's Upward and AHG and things like that. Here's worship, here's youth, here's outreach, right? So this group is responsible for planning and implementing what you kind of most regularly think about as ministry, right? The stuff going on at the church. Easter stuff, VBS stuff, basketball stuff, girls volleyball, youth group, community groups. All of those functions are led by that group. And if you flip over your thing onto the back page, if you're like, who's responsible for those? Well, there you go. There's all their names and contact information. So if you're like, okay, I have something I want to talk to about sports and activities, well, there you go. That's who you should go to, right? So that's kind of the ministry team, right? If you go straight down from that box, you'll see the resource team. This is the newest one, the one that was kind of formed. James Anderson, an elder, is currently chair of that group, though like me, he won't stay that way forever. Once that group gets established, they'll pick their own. These are the areas of responsibility are the kitchen, safety, finances, and facilities. That's like buildings, grounds, maintenance, parsonage, and the administrative stuff. So this is the group that's responsible for dealing with all the stuff that makes ministry possible, right? taking care of the grounds, paying the bills, paying the staff, right? Ensuring that we have policies and procedures and that things are done in a way that keeps us all safe, right? That's that particular group. So again, on the back page, if you need somebody to contact on that, there's their contact information. This will all go out in an email as well, so you don't have to keep up with a piece of paper. But that's that group. So you got the ministry team, right? You got the resource team. Now on the other side, this side for you probably, is the deacon team. Tony Burns is currently the chair for that. Aaron Cassavant is the elder that's attached to it. Though Tony's term is ending this summer, a new chair will be chosen. But they're responsible for the worship space, for all of this. They're responsible for hospitality, for taking care of meal trains and things like that. They're responsible for guest services and benevolence and communion, which we will do here later. Okay, but this is how we're set up for the future. Like these three groups are major working groups, and you say, okay, well, why do you need to know this? One is I think it's helpful for you to know, how is my church organized, right? Like, yes, we get together, yes, we worship, yes, there's other stuff going on, but who's responsible for what? Where do we go? How does it happen? It's also helpful for you. It's like, I have a thought on something we should do. Who do I go talk to, right? Historically, the answer has been, everybody comes to me. Probably not the best way to do it. Go to whoever is, if you've got an idea for sports, you're going to go to Candace, right? If you've got an idea for hospitality functions or how we should do things in the parking lot, you're going to go talk to a deacon. But it's helpful for us. Take suggestions, right, to the first rung on that ladder there. And as I mentioned, this has occupied, the leadership for probably the last 5 months. And we've got it in place. It's being perfected, right? So there's the skeleton's there. We're still kind of working out some of the stuff. But because we've got that in place, it now allows us to begin to go to look at some of these other things. I mentioned the capital projects a little bit earlier. We've accumulated and evaluated a list of and by capital projects, we mean like big stuff, not like, we need to replace some light bulbs. Capital projects meaning like stuff we have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on, okay? We put out a list of those to you guys right before Easter, let you kind of tell us which ones were important to you. We had a meeting this past Sunday. We gathered all three of those leadership groups up in the chapel, and we had a large, robust discussion around what should we do here, like which ones are important. And we decided to focus on the parking lot, on exterior grounds, and on the worship space, more or less in that order, though there will be some overlap as things get done. So we are in the process now. We're looking for bids, we're looking for quotes, we're putting together pricing, and we're gonna see how much funding we need to raise. We have some money for this, not enough for all of it. So you should expect to see a couple of things coming up. First, that work will start on some of these projects within the next few months. Second, fundraising will begin for the remainder of those projects. I don't know exactly how much that's going to be. My best guess at this point is somewhere around $150,000 will need to be raised. And you look and you go, whoo, that's not a lot of money for a congregation this size, I'll tell you that. So don't let that number kind of freak you out. Yeah. These are a lot of things that are overdue at Gallup Hill that we've been putting off for year after year after year after year. And so here we are at the point where we're ready to go. So understand that that's all coming to a head. Ministry changes coming up. This one's not in the slide deck up there. A ministry year is coming to an end. Summer's coming up. It's a busy time of VBS and all kinds of stuff. It's also a planning time. Our goal is to have the structure of the church set by here at the end of spring so that as we roll into summer, we can begin to plan what does our new kind of ministry set look like coming out for next year. We wanted to have key positions filled by the summertime. Most of those have been filled. We're still working on deacon nominations and things like that. But there will be tons of planning going on for ministry 2025 and 2026. Some of that will take into consideration the feedback you guys gave us from the innovation sermon from a few weeks ago. We're working through some of that. But I also wanted you to see, and here's where I want to end this kind of first section. It's not always easy to see, right? There's already stuff, like we're talking about stuff hiding behind the scenes. There's already stuff beginning to happen. You can look around the room, right? And you can see some of that. So I want to highlight for you some wins already. We've talked about mission, we've talked about vision, we've talked about making our church, good, not great. We've asked for suggestions, but I want to make sure you guys see, like, it's already starting to happen. One of the things, there's a new community group that's formed, right? We restarted community groups like a month or two ago, right? With the express goal of the idea of these is that they multiply. We've multiplied. There's one new group. It's begun. It's begun in New London. It's a new town. It's a new place. A group of people in a new little spot that Gallup Hill has never been before. Okay? That's a win. You look at young adults, right? That age group has been a hole in this church congregation for 11 years. Like, we've had teens and we've had 30-somethings, but that middle ground was completely absent. That's not the case anymore. There's an opportunity now to begin to do ministry for these college to late 20-something. That's changed. I sent an email out. When I pulled the list together, there were 15 people on it. Not bad. I don't know if you've noticed, but you look around at attendance in the congregation. Gallup Hill has been a church at least under my leadership, that for the better part of 10 years kind of capped out at about 120 or 125, and there was this glass ceiling there that we could not get through, and we'd boop, 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 up to like 140 and doop, 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 right back down, right? And it just over and over again. It's like bing, 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 bing for years. Attendance has been holding steady at 150 to 160 for several months now. Okay? That's a win. We're growing again, and that's a big deal. Because once momentum is hard to get, but once you get it, it's easier to keep it going. There's some momentum here, church. That's a really good thing. And as I thought about this, it kind of led me to the thought, right? And if you want to write down, like, hey, like, there's a kind of a spiritual thought to hang your hat on for this particular section. It's this, that every movement of God, it's not going to be on the screen, every movement of God begins with a single step. That's it. Every movement of God begins with one step. And you look at those individually, one new group, that's a step, right? Maybe a group of young adults, like, that's a step, right? The church has kind of restructured and got itself to where the leadership's no longer kind of frustrated and all pulling different, that's a step, right? These steps are happening, and I want us to see it, right? Even if it's not what you guys are like, well, this is what I want to, okay, we haven't taken that step yet, but steps are happening. And that's a really good thing. Every movement begins with one step. So I remember in my own life, this was before we moved from Atlanta. I was in I don't remember why I was home. I was home one day with our oldest, and she was like 1. And I'm trying to think, I guess this had to be right before my father passed, because she was kind of toddling around in the hospital while he was passed. So this must have been right before that. But I'll never forget, we were down in the living room for some reason, right, in our house in Atlanta, and she was holding on to the coffee table, just kind of walking around it, right? And she finally just kind of let go and took like that one step. You guys know, if you have kids, you've seen the one step, right? And then bang, right down on the rear end. And I was like, oh, okay. So I picked her up and I put her back at the coffee table, and I walked across the room, and I sat down and I was like, come here. And she let go, and she took that one step, and she stopped. She was like, okay. And then she just walked across the room. And that was it, right? So I was like, oh, this is cool. So I picked her up, I took her back over, I put her back at the coffee table, went back to the other side of the room, sat back down. I was like, come on, right? And now she's off to the races. And so I remember at this point, right? At this point, it's awesome. At this point, I make a rookie mistake. I film it, and I send it to my wife. And she's like, oh my gosh, I didn't get to see her first steps, right? So it's like, oh, okay. Should have just waited till she got home and was like, ah. And Maggie's doing laps around the house at that point, and like, oh, look what happened. I don't know, right? But Every movement, though, begins with a step. And if you've ever raised kids, you know when you take those first couple of steps, like things start to pick up and move after that. One step turns into two, and then to three, and to four, and then to five, and you combine that. And I don't know how closely you guys follow like church stuff. It was a banner, I'll call it a banner Easter for us. Like if you were here on Easter, we could not fit another person really. We had 275 people in the building. And that's the most that's ever been in here for a worship service. All the way back, it was back pre-COVID. It was like in the 220s. We were stacked on top of each other in terms of parking, right? We had people blocking people. It was a glorious problem, but it was a problem. But that was not just us, okay? Talking to other pastors around New England, that was them too. Talking and following other pastors around the country, that was them too. Listening, I follow these different groups on Twitter and on social media, like that was them too in places that are way further down the post-Christian road than we are, like the UK and France and some of that was them too. So I say this to kind of lead me into my second major point, and this is where I go from looking to what has happened in the past to looking to what potentially is happening into the future. I think we're entering into a potential season of good ministry. Ministry like life has seasons. Grab your Bibles, open up to the book of Ecclesiastes. Yeah, baby. When's the last time you've been in Ecclesiastes? How many of you guys even knew that was a book in the Bible, right? Ecclesiastes, right after Proverbs, after Psalms. Just as an aside, while you're turning and trying to find this book of the Bible, right? If you want the biblical response to like post-Christian, like secular progressive culture, like the book of Ecclesiastes is it. Like, read it. It's amazing. We're going to hit chapter 3. I'm going to be in chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. You'll recognize this as a song from the Byrds, though they didn't write it. If you're older, if that name actually means something to you, right? The Who? No, not the Who, the Byrds. All right, chapter 3. I'm going to pick it up. For everything there's a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. Time to be born, time to die. Time to plant, and time to pluck up what was planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. Time to break down, a time to build up. Time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, time to gather stones together. Time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. Time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. The author of Ecclesiastes, refers to him, it's Solomon, right? He refers to himself as the preacher. And this passage is very simple in its message. There are seasons to life. And the preacher, Solomon, presents a series of opposites, right? Born, die, break up, or break down, build up, embrace, refrain from embracing, keep, cast away. There's no value judgments on any of it. Right? He doesn't say these are good and these are bad. He simply says there's a rhythm to life, right? As you go through. There's an order to life given by God and his sovereign timing as part of his good order. There are times to embrace, right? And there's times to say, you know what? This isn't working. We need to go our separate ways. There's time to tear things down, right? Like this is no longer functioning the way it should. This is no longer good. We need to tear it down. And there's times to build. We need something else. There's time to seek that which was lost, and there's times to give up and say, I couldn't find it. There's times to keep silent, to keep your thoughts to yourself. There's times to speak. There's times to love, to hate, war, peace. Again, the preacher gives no value judgments to any of it. It's a simple acknowledgement that in this life, on this earth, there are seasons. And they come and they go. You don't determine when they roll in. You don't determine when they roll out. Like life, like ministry has seasons. Ministry, right? You see it in the scripture passage that Lou read this morning from Acts 18. I didn't realize we had recycled that, but his point was great, right? Like the Lord can speak through a passage for a variety of different things. Paul stayed in Corinth, right? God said, Paul, you're staying in Corinth. Why? Because there was a fruitful season of ministry that was available at that point in that time in Corinth. And so Paul stayed there 18 months. And the church at Corinth was born. Jesus says it, right, when he's meeting with the woman at the well. After, this is John chapter 4. After his meeting with the woman at the well, the disciples come back. Jesus gathers them together and says, look, right, as people were coming to see him, he's like, the fields are white for harvest. Like there's a season, and it was just a few days for them there, but there's a time of harvest here. I've been here 11 years, and at this point, it's interesting. I've seen all the seasons now. I've seen the winter. We've seen the winter. Some of us have seen the winter of a nearly dead church that had to be replanted. We've seen the spring of a church replant. We've seen the summer of those initial years of growth. We've seen the fall of like 2018 and 2019 when we kind of lost our focus and lost our edge and got complacent and things began to slow down. We've seen the winter of COVID. Now here's what I think. I think we're entering into a new spring and summer of ministry. I think there's a fruitful time of ministry coming. And I don't know if you feel it, and I don't really know any way other to describe it than there's been like a vibe shift, like everywhere, all at the same time. Where all of a sudden, people are spiritually open, interested again, right? I don't know how to describe it, but just the mood has changed. And there's opportunities here. And there's an openness to Christianity and to truth and to religion that I haven't seen at least in my life, in probably 20 years. There's a growing, in my opinion, rejection of secularism, right? That's really fueled by disappointment. They promised utopia, and we were delivered depression. And so I believe we're entering, church, into one of these springs and summers, a time where there's a lot of opportunity for growth, not just in numbers, but in depth of our own discipleship and relationship with Jesus, but also an opportunity for us to grow, to be that light in Ledyard and beyond. I shared this with our deacon and ministry and resource teams in our meeting this past Sunday, and here's the thing. I don't know how long it's going to last. They don't last forever, right? Maybe a year, maybe 3 years, maybe if we're lucky, 5. But I do think it's come. Maybe it's already on us. So I think that the Lord, right, in his sovereign timing has helped us really go through this process of reorganizing, resetting, retooling, revisioning for this moment where we can take advantage of this season of ministry. I see the hand of God, right, in the timing of what's happened to set us up for what's to come. And so I leave you with just a few thoughts before we come here to the Lord's table. Ask yourself, what's your role? What's your role in this? I want to see our mission take off. But the people in these little bubbles on this little piece of paper, right, we can't do it all. What's your role? Building momentum for an organization, it's a lot like rolling a giant stone wheel, right? That first rotation is incredibly difficult. That second rotation is incredibly difficult. That third one gets a little easier, and then it gets a little easier, and a little easier, and a little easier. But it really gets easier when people join in. What's your role? And then the second thing I'll just leave you with is, how much are you praying for God's work and God's movement in your life, in your family's life, in the life of our community, in the country, in the world? Pray for our elders, pray for our deacons, pray for our ministry leaders, pray for our resource teams, pray for our church as a whole, that we will be faithful and that this church will be faithful and fruitful. Like, we want to see a harvest. And I think we're entering into that period of time where we could really see it. If we all get on the same page and we all get in the same boat and we're all rowing the same direction. Pray for that. I'm going to pray for us. And we're going to come and we're going to share the Lord's table this morning.